So can a Swiss watch actually be 100% Swiss made? SuisseMecanica thinks so. What's up guys, it's your boy Rich here with SuisseMecanica's SM8 Chrono. You could say it's really expensive because it's 100% Swiss made. But is it worth it? Let's go take a closer look. Let's go. And here is SuisseMecanica's SM8 Chrono in 43mm without the crown and crown guard, and then with the crown and crown guard we add another 5.5mm. They use a 23mm strap width, and it's 18.3mm tall. Alright, calm down, it's really not that bad. Let me show you what it looks like on the wrist. And here it is on my 6.5-inch wrist. There isn't anything I can say. There's just no getting around its thickness. It's a big boy, but as a big boy, it doesn't wear overly large, as we can see here. I don't mind a thick watch. I do mind it when the watch or the lugs extend past the wrist bone, which is what we use to determine if a watch is too large for us. Not so much the thickness. And as you can see here, the lugs do not extend past my wrist bone, making it very wearable, and it is really comfortable. Okay, so there is a lot to this watch. I wonder where I should start. Okay, let's start with this one right here. But before I do get on with the mono pusher question, let me start with the dial. I think it is a really attractive layout. SuisseMecanica uses the central seconds as a chronograph timer with the 60 seconds hand on the register at 9 o'clock and with the 30-minute timer at 3 o'clock. So there are two unique texts on the dial, at 12 o'clock where it says dual time, and then down here above 6 o'clock where it says chronograph mono pusher. So yes, let's start there. What exactly is a mono pusher? We've heard that before and we've read that before. Well, a mono pusher is a very specific type of chronograph that uses one button to start the time, to stop the time, and to reset it, instead of the very common two-pusher chronographs today, largely in part of the popularity of the use of the 7750 movement, which uses two pushers. It is not a new form of chronograph or a new type of invention. The mono pusher was actually the original form. It's just really rare. Most chronographs use a 7750 movement. So the first thing that we notice about this crown guard is it probably reminds us of Panerai. I've owned two different Panerais, and that's where we would just pull out the lever and access the pushers and the crown. Here it uses two pushers and an essential crown. Here with SuisseMecanica, we simply slide it out or down and up. And I believe SuisseMecanica patented this sliding crown guard motion. So here the top button, let's use this as the mono pusher. So we use this to start the time. And there it goes, operating really smoothly. And the test that I use to determine the quality of the pushers is the indentation test, where the tip of the fingertip gets indented. And here we can see mine is fine. That's because the poorly made pushes, we have to push down really hard, and that leaves the marks on our fingertips. Here, SuisseMecanica's resistance is just right. So we'll stop it, and then the same pusher will reset it. The top pusher, so let's do that again. Start, stop, reset. The top pusher also acts as with a second function, and that's where it says dual time zone. So I'm in LA, so we would simply rotate this, and this is bi-directional. So if I'm in the East Coast, let's say New York, I would set this to 3, which means it's 3 hours ahead of where I am. It's pretty simple but effective. So the crown here, the main crown, if we can look at it around the back, we can see there's a little ridge, or I should say a little space there for easy grip, so we can use that to use our finger to pull it out, and we can simply just wind it like this. Now the bottom pusher, which is typically used on a two-pusher chronograph to reset the time, instead here it is used to rotate the bezel here if we want to go swimming with it. Though I would not swim with this because it is too expensive and a little too nice for that. But it is nice knowing that it is water resistant to 200 meters. I would say what I'm noticing or have noticed is I have pretty normal size fingers, whatever that means, but it doesn't bother me is what I'm trying to say on this. But I can see somebody with wider fingers having a little harder access to this because of this crown guard. So it may not be optimal for somebody with really wide fingers, but it will be beneficial in the water if you are actually willing to take this into the water when the fingers are slippery and it's wet. In that case, it will provide pretty good grip because it is a little on the sharper side, meaning the ridges on all of the crowns here. So that's what this bottom pusher is used in the case of SuisseMecanica. I think this is a really nice time for some wrist shots. And you know Mickey will keep you company, and I'll be right back. Oh. The entire case is done in a really nice brushed finishing all the way through, and it is a really nice job that SuisseMecanica did. It's something that we would expect, maybe because it is 100% Swiss made, or certainly because of the price of this watch. In any case, it is really well done. So earlier, when I was showing the crown, we got a glimpse of this movement. So look at this mouth-watering movement. What exactly are we seeing here? It's certainly not the standard 7750. It's far more elaborate than that. And that's because SuisseMecanica uses the Concepto movement. And for those of us who aren't familiar with Concepto, Concepto creates movements for a lot of different brands, or they even customize certain movement or heavily modify some movements, oftentimes making it an entirely new movement, a better movement. In this case, Concepto made a custom movement for SuisseMecanica. It is a gorgeous mouth-watering movement. Really well done by Concepto for SuisseMecanica. The SM8 and all SuisseMecanicas are 100% Swiss made. So what does that mean? Well, just because we see Swiss made on the dial of a watch, that doesn't mean it's 100% Swiss made. In fact, most Swiss made labeled watches are not 100% Swiss made, and that's because they can get up to 40% of the watch coming from different origins other than Switzerland. In the case of SuisseMecanica, that is not the case. Even the case and the dial are Swiss made, maybe a little pun intended there. So everything is, including the hands, the case, the dial, everything, the movement is Swiss made. Everything except the strap. But that doesn't count as towards what determines a Swiss made watch because the strap has nothing to do with the watch. Instead, they use a French made strap here, really nicely made, genuine alligator strap, and I believe they use APB, and I may butcher the name, so I will put the name of the French made strap here somewhere on the screen. But this is a really, really well made French leather strap. Other than that, this is 100% Swiss made. The price of the SM8 Chrono is $15,500 excluding VAT. And I know one of the first things that we may chirp about when we see that kind of a price on maybe a brand that we may not be familiar with is, well, for that kind of money, I would rather buy X, Y, or Z brand. And that's fair. I do get that. But I would have to say that the SuisseMecanica, once we start getting past Omega and Breitling, and we already have our Rolex, or we get past Rolex, we start to broaden our horizons where we start getting interested and learning about other higher end brands, because the higher end brands certainly do not end with Rolex and Omega. And then I would actually say that this is on the level with Audemars Piguet's Royal Oak or Vacheron Constantin's Overseas. It's on that level. And I think when we spend that kind of money on a watch, we all look for a certain level of exclusivity. We want that kind of rarity in a watch. And I would even go further and say that the SuisseMecanica is a lot more unique than either the APRO or Vacheron's Overseas. And in fact, here on the side of the case, it's done very tastefully where it says SuisseMecanica, and then it says number 36 of number 50 first edition, because these are limited editions. So if we really want something that is really rare and unique, I would have to say that the SuisseMecanica is even more rare, I guess that's the right word, than those other brands. It certainly is a watch that is deserving to be recognized, and I think it is worth this kind of money. Is $15,500 a lot? Yes, of course. Just on that monetary amount, $15,000 plus is a lot of money. It's certainly a lot of money for a watch. Do I think it's overpriced? It depends on how we want to frame this. If we put this into perspective with other similarly price watches and with the same kind of quality, then, such as Audemars Piguet's or Vacheron Constantine's, then the answer is no. This is certainly on that same level. Would I spend my money on a Swiss Mecanica? Yes, I would, if I could. And we're back with some final thoughts on SuisseMecanica. And there are two areas that I wanted to cover. And the first is on the owner and director of SuisseMecanica, Juliana Arbeliz, because she is a woman heading up a very successful watch company in a very male-driven industry. And if we look at all the different job titles from the bigger brands, we almost never see a woman holding a high-ranking position. SuisseMecanica was established in 2010, and I think I read somewhere that anytime an independent brand, and SuisseMecanica is the very definition of a successful independent brand, introduces us to a very expensive watch, they often fail within the first 3 years, or they have to reinvent themselves by introducing us to a more budget-friendly watch. Not the case with Swiss America, no. With SuisseMecanica. So I think Juliana is doing something really right in a male-driven industry. I also want to talk about how we determine the quality of a watch. And when I first took possession of the SuisseMecanica SM8, this is where I got the idea from that. Because if I didn't know it was a SuisseMecanica, or I didn't know how expensive it was, and I was just left stripped of the name and just to examine the watch, I could immediately tell that this is a quality watch, and yes, it would have to be really expensive. Not the case with a lot of the other bigger brands, because I think a lot of the bigger brands rely on their branding. I mean, they spend tens of millions of dollars a year reminding us of their brand. And, I think it's almost like we need that self-reassurance or that validation that this watch has to be a good watch because it comes from ABC brand. But if those ABC brands stripped us of those titles and we had no idea who made it or how much those watches are, we don't necessarily determine that, oh, this is a really well-made watch and I'm sure this is really expensive. I think because those are largely mass-produced watches and they lack a lot of uniqueness for us to immediately identify that watch without knowing its branding, that it must be a really expensive watch. So I think SuisseMecanica in a head-to-head battle wins a lot of those battles on the quality of the watches alone. I think if we're in a position where we can afford this type of watch, we also realize that our options are wide open. We can pretty much get whatever watch we want. Yet time and time again, watch fans choose a SuisseMecanica. And I think that says a lot. I mean, the brand is well respected and highly regarded in the watch world from watch media and watch fans. And I think they are really marketed. And I think they really found their niche with watch fans that want something different and unique. In other words, not just an overly priced watch with basic materials and a basic movement. I think SuisseMecanica has earned that right to charge the prices that they are to watch fans who know the options out there, yet they choose the SuisseMecanica. I think SuisseMecanica is going to continue to thrive as they are approaching their 10th anniversary. They are well marketed with exceptional products under the ownership and guidance of Juliana. And because of the success of SuisseMecanica, I also hope Juliana will be able to open more doors for women in the watch industry. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you the next time. I think the the SM8. And if we look at all the job titles of the bigger, we can choose whatever we want at this price point. And yet we choose the SuisseMecanica.